lesson for April 14th. Our objective for this lesson is to explore the relationships among parallelograms, rectangles, squares, rhombuses, and trapezoids.
You find lines that are perpendicular on a rectangle's perimeter. Or let's break it down even simpler. They make right angles in particular.
Parallel lines never meet. Intersecting lines make these. Perpendicular lines meet at 90 degrees. Put your hands in the air with me. Parallel, intersecting, perpendicular, they're rectangular.
Now let's talk about detecting if two lines are intersecting. It's the term that we select if at any point two lines connect.
Parallel lines never meet. Intersecting lines make these. Perpendicular lines meet at 90 degrees. Put your hands in the air with me. Parallel, intersecting, perpendicular, they're rectangular.
When two lines will never touch, then you can tell that those two lines are parallel. Like these telephone wires up above the street. Parallel lines will never meet.
Parallel lines never meet. Intersecting lines make these. Perpendicular lines meet at 90 degrees. Put your hands in the air with me. Parallel, intersecting, perpendicular, they're rectangular.
So in our last lesson, we talked about parallelograms, and we've been talking a lot about different properties. To remind you, a property is a character or quality that something has. So here are our properties of parallelograms. The opposite sides are parallel, and the opposite sides are also congruent, which means that they are equal in length. We are going to take a look at this page in our math workbook called Describing Rectangles. So all of the figures are rectangles. We see three different figures here. Adele said, rectangles are special kinds of parallelograms. So a rectangle is a parallelogram with four right angles. Again, four right angles. These figures are squares and these figures are rhombuses. Takeshi said, squares are special kinds of rectangles, and Cora said rhombuses are special kinds of parallelograms. A square is a rectangle with sides that are all the same length, and a rhombus is a parallelogram with sides that are all the same length. So do the sides of the rectangles meet to form a right angle? Absolutely. And is Adele correct up here? Are rectangles parallelograms? Yes, they absolutely are. And how do we know? They are quadrilaterals, and both pairs of opposite sides are parallel. What makes rectangles special parallelograms? They have four right angles. A rectangle is a parallelogram with four right angles, and a rectangle is a parallelogram in which two pairs of opposite sides are the same length.
Hello, welcome to Moo Math. In this video, I'd like to talk about rectangles, rhombuses, and squares. Each of these are plain two-dimensional shapes. Let's look at some of the properties of each of these shapes. Each of these shapes are considered to be a polygon, which is a closed figure composed of lined segments. They also are considered to be quadrilaterals, which mean they each have 4 sides. They also are all parallelograms, which means they have opposite sides that are parallel. Let's go ahead and look at some of the unique properties of a rhombus, rectangle, and a square. What is a rhombus? A rhombus is most commonly recognized as a diamond, but they are not limited to this shape. Let's take a look at 14 properties of a rhombus. A rhombus is a quadrilateral, which means it has 4 sides. In addition, each of these sides are congruent, or equal. The opposite sides of a rhombus are parallel. A rhombus has opposite angles that are congruent. The diagonals of a rhombus are perpendicular. The diagonals of a rhombus form 4 congruent interior triangles. The diagonals of a rhombus bisect each other. This means that they cut each other in half. The formula for finding the perimeter of a rhombus equals P equals 4S. S equals sides. The formula for area equals 1/2 diameter 1 times diameter 2. A rhombus has all the properties of a parallelogram. These include opposite sides are congruent, the opposite angles are congruent, the diagonals bisect each other. All squares can be considered a rhombus, but not all rhombuses are squares. The diagonals of a rhombus bisect each other, but they do not have to be the same length. Hello, welcome to Moo Moo Math. In this video, I'd like to talk about the properties of a rectangle. A rectangle is part of the quadrilateral family, which means it is a plane shape with 4 sides. In addition, it has several other properties. A rectangle is a 4-sided polygon with opposite sides being parallel. In addition, a rectangle has 4 right angles, and the sum of these interior angles add to 360 degrees. Let's talk about the diagonals of a rectangle. The diagonals of a rectangle are of equal length. The diagonals also bisect and create 2 pairs of equal triangles. Opposite sides of a rectangle are equal, and the opposite sides are parallel. All squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares. Hello, welcome to Moo Moo Math. In this video, I'd like to talk about the properties of a square. A square is a plane shape. It is a quadrilateral that is 2-dimensional, so it has length and width, but no height. A square has 4 congruent sides, 4 equal sides. Along with these 4 sides, you have 4 right angles. The diagonals of a square are perpendicular and create 4 right angles. The diagonals also bisect each other. The diagonals also bisect opposite angles and create equal 45 degrees. as a result of the diagonals bisecting opposite angles, they create triangles that are congruent. Triangle A, B, and C is congruent to A, C, D. And finally, a square could be described as a rhombus with 4 right angles, or a rectangle with congruent sides.
Alright, so we're going to look at the properties of rhombuses, rectangles, and squares. A rhombus is a parallelogram with 4 congruent sides, as we see over here with the 4 dashes. A rectangle is a parallelogram with 4 right angles, which we see over here. And a square is a parallelogram with 4 congruent sides and 4 right angles. Your exit ticket for this lesson is going to be on Edmodo. You are going to describe quadrilaterals. Use as many words below as possible to describe each figure. Please make sure that you have this done before our next math lesson.